Hey, gang. So they have dropped the new roadmap numbers on us, new progress tracker numbers. It's actually been 6 weeks since we got the last one of these, and I was kind of expecting nightmare mode where there would just be changes all over the place. There's actually not as many as I was expecting. So let's go ahead and get into this. But first I wanted to drop the caveats at the front. I usually drop this after the break, but this time we've added so many people to the channel. I had, for whatever reason, the YouTube algorithm pick me in the last couple weeks. I have no idea why, but welcome. I do this progress tracker thing, and I've been doing this basically since they originally dropped the roadmap. If you're on Reddit, you've probably seen my Sprintwatch, my roadmap in graph form I've been doing for years. It was the first roadmap tracker, but by no means the most popular one. But once they moved to this new system of the progress tracker, it actually became more relevant because what it was measuring kind of went pretty hand in hand with what the progress tracker was showing, whereas previously it was just kind of, here you go. Anyway, so what I do is what a lot of content creators do with the first couple parts is I read the roadmap roundup, just kind of go through the release views, see what's in there, and then the bulk of this show, this is a longer form show, so buckle up. I go through the progress tracker and just kind of track the changes that I've seen, like the major changes that I've seen, and kind of the what I feel are important deliverables or things that I just kind of have an interest in. There's a lot of changes on this one, and I'm going to kind of have a longer intro than normal just because there are a lot of newer people on this. So I kind of feel like I have to express things I haven't expressed for a while, just because most people kind of knew how this thing goes. So I'm going to start with the caveats now. So the first caveat, this is actually a new one, something that I had suspected for a long time, but had never been confirmed. They actually confirmed this a couple weeks back, is that their progress tracker isn't, I don't think it's a direct feed from the Jira. I think somebody, probably Jake, is manually putting it in or manually loading it from the Jira, but maybe the devs aren't loading their progress into the Jira. So there is lag in between what the progress tracker is showing and what people are actually working on and where things are doing. And since they sometimes drop weeks and sort of say, yeah, this thing's ready to go, we might actually get something that on here is saying it's got weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks to go. And same thing the other way. Something might have wrapped and it looks like it's ready to drop in, but another team has actually started work on it. There's a couple examples about that can go. So lag doesn't necessarily mean anything. But it does mean that the picture that we're looking at is a little bit out of date at this point. And as far as like the interests go, and I kind of touched on this, this is all just my opinion. I'm basing it based on the information we have. And the information we have is fairly scant, even though we have things like the monthly reports and the progress tracker. All I'm doing here is educated guesses, and that's all any of the content creators are doing. If CIG says something that contradicts what I'm saying, CIG is correct. So on the final point that I want to put on there is that CIG uses the agile system, which they go in 2-week sprints. A dev or devs will work on a deliverable for 2 weeks. At the end of the 2 weeks, they reassess, they kind of figure out what they need. Do they need another team to come in? Do they need tools? Do they need tech? Are they good? Is it a dead end? And one of the downsides of the agile system is that devs can get off on a rabbit hole because it encourages creativity. The downside is that it can lead down a rabbit hole and a dead end. On the upside, it can lead to things like Planet Tech just dropping in, or racing. Like a couple devs kind of bust out a couple racetracks around the PU in their free time, and we've got it now. Things like that. So Agile's kind of give and take. I am not a dev. One of my best friends, Knight55, is, and he's not a huge fan of Agile, but from what I understand, it's kind of the industry standard. So because of that, something can look like it's 100% complete on the progress tracker, or something players can look like it is like a quarter or halfway done, when actually all that's happening is they're just kind of focusing on like a concept sprint or a white box sprint, or just putting out the components, and then they're going to actually build the thing. So that whole sprint hasn't been calculated yet. So yeah, this one's longer form, by the way. So if you kind of like little bite-sized chunks, this is not the show for you. But the final point I'll make is, with the information about the lag and the sprints and the fact that we don't know if this is super accurate or not, how useful is the progress tracker? Okay, let's get into the roundup roadmap. Yes, the roundup roadmap. Notable changes for June 14th, 2023. I don't read the top part usually. Although now that I've said that, no, they didn't sneak anything in there. Not, again, like I said, not many changes. Release view. The following card has been added to the 3.20 column on the release view. Wheeled vehicle handling improvements. Updates and improvements to current ground vehicle movement parameters and simulation, allowing for more robust tuning and identity between various ground vehicles. So this is the long promised vehicle control. So you can do the things where you can drive up like a 90-degree slope and just park there with a ground vehicle, so they just kind of bounce everywhere like they're big balloons. This is what's going to fix it. And we've been hearing about this thing for a long time, and it turns out it's been done since like Q1 of 2022. So like a year and a half ago, they finished this thing, and now they're going to roll it out to us finally. So yes, they've finally decided that we earned it. But that'll be 3.20, so probably September, hopefully. Anyway, progress tracker. With this published, we're beginning to add the Q4 2023 schedule for upstream teams, with additional teams being added to subsequent publishes. The following deliverables have been added to the progress tracker: Mirai Fury, building, implementing, and balancing Mirai's Snub Fighter, the Fury, as a game-ready vehicle. Tumbril Storm. I'm thinking like Stonk. Still playing with that. Let me know down in the comments what you think it should be, because Storm doesn't work for it. It's too tiny. Building, implementing, and balancing Tumbril's light tank, the Storm, as a game-ready vehicle. And that is on the progress tracker, not the release view. So they haven't said they're going to drop the Tumbril Storm into 3.20. So that's it for that. So and the thing that I was wrong about is actually associated with the Tumbril Storm. We'll get into that in a bit. So here's the Fury, was just added to 3.19. We've obviously got them both now, both the Fury and the MX. Kind of cool little ships. Up here in 3.20, kind of looking like it's going to be just kind of a quality of life improvement, like a bunch of Arena Commander things. It looks like they're going to be rolling out a bunch of missions. We'll get into that a little bit when I plug along in the progress tracker. Mystical Sea, still tentative. They haven't been working on it, so I mean, it looks like it is actually complete. If they think they can get it in there, links in the up above part for a talk that I did on the Whole Sea and what I think it signifies that ship is finally dropping into the game. Vehicle wheeled improvements is what they added on here. Not much else to say. Tentative Q3, so September. IAE probably closer to November if I had to guess, if they're going to drop this. 3.19. Hopefully we're getting 3.19 tomorrow. Hopefully by the time you're watching this, unless you're up late. Let's go ahead and jump into the progress tracker. Okay, so I went ahead and I pre-gamed this with a few things that I have found interesting or there's big changes on. I've kind of broken them open. How I typically set this up is it kind of comes default set on teams and 2 quarters. I'd like to set it on 1 quarter and deliverables. And then one of the things that I like to do, if you come over to the left side here where this little arrow is and you can drop it down, you can actually see the individual teams that are working on it and when they're working on it. And that gives you a lot more context about where that deliverable actually is in development. So with that in mind, let's go ahead and keep going here. So I've got a bunch of notes. Actor status tier 2. This is just one that's kind of interesting to me. It's kind of wrapping soon. The last time we saw this, they jumped out a bunch of weeks on, and then they kind of jumped it back, and now it's on 12. This is one that I think is kind of a dark horse for the next tier of medical gameplay, because not so much these first things like hygiene, NPC status tracking, multiple bites, but DNA integrity, medical insurance, cybernetic limbs, and cloning. That sounds like if you get healed up at Grim Hex, your arm might stay at like a tier 3 injury or something like that, or might not work quite as well because they kind of botched the surgery. The guy's on meth or whatever the hell they call it in the Star Citizen universe, slam. But anyway, looks like it's wrapping up. I think there would probably be a longer sprint on this than 12 weeks, so I do expect this one to jump out. They might just roll it out to the medical institutions right now and then roll it out to us later. So if you get healed at a hospital, it'll matter. Eventually, I would expect this to be that if you are a medical person and you're working on someone, your skill will determine, your skill and the tools that you have access to will determine how permanent the damage is that you're healing. So actor status tier 2, that one's kind of a cool one, kind of snuck in there, but kind of a cool one. Aerodynamic control surfaces. And this is one that I keep expecting to jump out more, but so far it looks like it's pretty good. With them rolling out, no pun intended, the wheeled vehicle physics and making that work a little bit better. Wouldn't be shocked if we got aerodynamic control surfaces in there too. And basically that's just our ships will start acting more like they're in atmosphere when they fly down. The aerons and everything the flaps basically will actually move when the ship is moving around. Probably not all the ships at once because there's 200 ships in the game right now. So that's a lot of flaps to create, especially for the older ships where they don't have those assets. AI vehicle perception, I just keep this one up because it's kind of cool. If you've ever flown up on, ever done the Caterpillar mission, the one that's spawning all the bad guys, you'll notice that if you just stay airborne, they'll ignore you. They won't shoot at you. And likewise, if you drive up to a bunker, the turrets won't shoot at you. And you can just plink them away. And even if you're shooting at them, they're not going to shoot back at you because they can't perceive you. That's what that is. So that'll be changing eventually. Little loophole going away. A post on Tokyo. So I was really hoping we would be getting this one because get sometime in the next week for Alien Week, because its old duration was sitting over here, I think at 34 weeks, but it added 13 more weeks. So now it's sitting over here at the end of Q4. And remember, they were saying that the downstream teams haven't been added. So anything that's sort of landing near here on the progress tracker, that doesn't mean that they're going to deliver everything to us for Christmas. It means that they haven't put the planned sprints past this date. So this is as far as they've planned. Think of it that way. So post on Tokyo, unfortunately, we're probably getting it next year. Probably next year for Alien Week. Who knows? AR map marker system. This is one that I like to talk about because it is part of the new UI system. So the new map, moving it all over to building blocks. This will be one, I believe, that map marker, we will actually be able to put, like, drop a pin on something and sort of say, come here, there's something cool, or come meet me at this location. I think that's what that is, and building blocks will allow them to do that, because the star map is terrible, and this is one of the fixes to it. I was thinking, this is one of the many things I got wrong. I was thinking 319 was a dark horse ad for engineering, UI, and traversal, because all three of those things, like this sort of thing, were wrapping around the time 319 was going to drop, and then they dropped 319 and Invictus and basically blew that up. But maybe 3.20, maybe end of the year. We'll see. Engineering looks like it's going to be next year. Speaking of artificial gravity, kind of out here, it could make it into 3.20, but I would think if they were going to make 3.20 the engineering game loop or the multi-crew gameplay experience, basically engineering, I would think they would be hyping that up by now, but they really haven't been. They've kind of mentioned a couple things about engineering, but not like in 3.20 you will be seeing engineering. And I would think they would actually be hyping that if they thought that they'd be fitting that in there. So maybe next year, maybe they're waiting for Pyro to just kind of drop a bunch of stuff on us at once. Asteroid facilities, I'm pretty sure asteroid facilities are going to be a Pyro asset. So don't hold your breath for this one. It does look like it's wrapping around IAE time, so they might throw us a bone and start throwing out the air in Halo. Who knows? That is the one location in Stanton that hasn't made an appearance yet, as far as how it should be. You can sort of glitch into the air in Halo by stopping your quantum jump at a certain point, but the air in Halo is supposed to be far more dense than that, so dense that they have gateways, and that's how you fly through the air in Halo. We haven't seen any information on those for a while, like 4 or 5 years, so possible they ditched that, but as far as they haven't said they've ditched it, so who knows. ATC service, that's air traffic control. If you were around when they used to do the sort of tunnel that you'd have to fly down into or fly out of when you were landing at a landing zone or taking off from a landing zone, that's what this is. This is the new version of that, which I think is partially my fault, because back in the day I said it'd be really cool if you had a landing system like Alien when they were coming down on the planet, and it kind of had like the rectangles that kind of walked you through the system. And I was saying that you need to be going this speed or you'll get a fine this speed, and you get a fine this speed and go out fine. If you stray too far out of the box, you get a fine. If you stray really far out of the box, it would take control of your ship. Their idea of take control of the ship was much tighter than what I had in my brain. So I apologize for that. But it looks like they're coming up with a new system, which they'll have to. So air traffic control, once NPCs are in the game and actually flying around, hopefully their ships aren't landing on chairs, but who knows, they might be. We'll need an air traffic control system, because on top of potentially tens to hundreds of players coming into a landing zone, you're going to have 9 times as many NPCs landing there. So yeah, the skies around major landing zones will be a lot more complicated, and this is something they got to have up and running. 3.20, kind of doubt it. I don't think we're getting NPCs. I don't think we really need this until the NPCs are in, although they might let us play with it until that point, just to kind of tune it up until they get there. Bounty Hunter V2, I thought that this might be a 3.20 ad. It's kind of stretching out into that dark territory right now, so I think I kind of came to this conclusion at the start of this year when it became clear that they weren't going to be dropping Pyro this year. Bounty Hunter V2 will be a Pyro asset, so they're just kind of stretching that out and polishing it for Pyro. Like they are with a lot of the Pyro assets, they're just going to draw it out. Building interiors, a lot of us, myself included, thought that we were getting this with Lorville, but that maybe 3.20 will be getting the building interiors. This will expand the play area of the verse, especially the landing zones, by 1,000-fold. I mean, you'll have buildings you can actually go into and explore, and they are actually really detailed. Like, think some of the buildings in Cyberpunk. I don't know if it'll be every building in the verse, but more than we have now, which is 0. Squadron 42. I always kind of like to mention this. This is something that last year, and I actually had a commenter that used to hound me on this and call me an idiot all the time. This is good stuff, fun times. But through most of last year, I said, it looks like Squadron 42 is kind of moving towards beta. And I said, I don't know if they'll make an announcement for it, but this feels like beta at the end of this year, and I wouldn't be surprised if at the end of next year, which 2023, they make an announcement on Squadron 42 saying that next year, 2024, we'll be releasing it around Christmas. So kind of like what Starfield is doing now. And no, I don't think I know that Starfield is a really popular subject out there in a wide variety of communities. I'm looking forward to playing it. I am friends with one of the guys that made the first Fallout game. So yeah, Fallout's always kind of has a special place in my heart. I'm not the biggest fan of Bethesda as a company, but they have made some great games in the past. Fallout series, Skyrim. So I'm looking forward to that. I will probably do a playthrough on this channel when it comes out. I don't think it's a Squadron 42 killer. I think all of those games, No Man's Sky, Elite Dangerous, Eve, all of these games kind of feed on each other and push each other to push the envelope. They all come up with different ideas and different approaches that kind of feed into the others, and the best ideas will trickle out to the other projects. Will they be successfully implemented? Who knows? But my point on the progress tracker, long form, remember? This is looking like they're in polish mode. So I fully expect these things to jump out. They're going to, if they do say we're releasing in 2024, December 2024, these numbers are just going to keep going and going and going. And that doesn't mean they're going to miss that date. It just means they're polish, which is basically what I've been seeing here. That was one of the reasons I said it looks like they're in beta. Basically, when you hit beta, you're polishing. Character work, another Squadron 42 asset. This one and Character Creator could have knock-on effects. I would fully expect it to have knock-on effects to the PU. Our Character Creator sucks, but this is also art, animation, AI behavior. All of that's going to feed into the PU eventually. Hopefully, they can get the server tech cruising along enough that we start seeing the NPCs act a little bit more naturally, which is what I am really hoping for this year more than anything else. If we can get NPCs that stop standing on chairs and start moving around like they have a purpose by December, I'll be happy. If we don't, might be a little disappointed. Chemline, another Squadron 42 asset. It's a derelict station. But again, wrapping, you'll kind of notice the theme. All of the Squadron 42 assets are either wrapping very soon or wrapped or kind of in that polish phase. Like the downstream teams are the only ones left working on things, which is a really good sign. Crusader Spirit. Crusader Spirit added 26 weeks. And you'll also notice, speaking of downstream teams, this is an upstream team. They're the team that kind of builds the ship. Downstream teams are like audio, VFX, GFX. Those guys are the downstream teams. And a ship is not ready to drop into your lap until you see those downstream teams. I was thinking the Crusader Spirit was going to be a really good chance, or have a really good chance of dropping into our hands for IAE. But it's looking like it's going to miss that mark. So it'll probably be first patch of next year would be my guess, which is kind of too bad because it's not a huge ship. Also just reading through the monthly report, they keep talking about the C1, which is the cargo variant, and the A1, which is the bomber. They haven't mentioned the E1 yet, which that is the passenger liner, and it needs the passenger game loop, which requires NPCs not derping out, being able to walk on the ship and get in there. I was thinking they might do a workout where NPCs would just magically appear in their seats and then magically disappear, just kind of the way they're doing the cargo, but I think they're going to just implement it physicalized to begin with, so they're not doing like an ad hoc system and then the real system. because then they have to rip the other one out, and I'm sure that causes problems. But kind of disappointing, but on two fronts, because it means we're not getting those passenger missions, but it also means we're not getting the E1. But Crusader Spirit, I'm guessing beginning next year. It's not a gigantic ship. 76 weeks is about right for a freelancer size ship. It's a little long, but they're building 2 of them at once, so it makes sense. I can get 3. I'm sure they're going to build the one. They're just not going to give it to us until they have the game loop working. Cutting tier 2. This is something that we need for next level of salvaging. Basically cutting up ships and feeding them into the mulchers on both the Reclaimer and the Vulture. You'll need that. This is also for the multi-tool itself, being able to cut things. So yeah, this is kind of a good indicator of where salvage is at, the next tier of salvage, which they're not in a huge rush about because current version works pretty well. You can pull components, people are having fun with it, so the pressure's a little bit off. We'll take a look at that when we get down to vehicle munching. Disarray ammunition. We've got a whole bunch of new ammunition types, and this is the actual actor or weapon feature team which build the thing. So this isn't just a concept team writing up a narrative of what they're supposed to do. They're actually making all these different ammunitions that'll do different things. So weapons are about to become a lot more complicated, y'all. Of course, they still haven't balanced them out, but they might have been waiting for all these ammunition types to come out first. Distortion propagation. This is just kind of a type of weapon. Can basically damage your component, shut your ship down without actually causing damage to the physical structure of the ship. It's just the electronics inside. Might be getting that in 3.20. Kind of makes sense if they do aerodynamic control surfaces, the new wheeled vehicles, or physics, and kind of started fixing the sort of long lingering weapon balance that we've been hearing about for years now. Duster faction outfits. There's a few gangs on here that are getting outfits, but most of them are pyro. Dusters are actually, I'm pretty sure they are a Hurston gang. But they're wrapping up. So when you start going through Hurston bunkers, you're doing Hurston missions, you might actually see Dusters instead of Ninetails, which would make sense since Ninetails are primarily Crusader. So we've got Fire Hazard here. This is one that kind of comes on and off a lot. I wouldn't expect us to get Fire Hazard, even if it's 100% complete. I wouldn't expect to get it until Engineering Game Loop comes in, because those two are so tied hand in hand of components overheating and bursting into flames. You take damage, things burst into flames. I would expect that to come with the Engineering Game Loop no matter when it finishes. Flak ammunition, another type of ammunition. It could become a lot more dangerous to go on those Idris missions if it's blasting out flak. Freight elevators, heavily tied to the next tier of cargo. Something that's a little bit worrying about getting the next level of cargo, which I would expect would be kind of required for the whole sea, is this is kind of falling into that black hole territory of this is as far as we've planned it. If this is as far as they've planned it, then it's probably a next year asset, which means that we're probably not getting persistent hangars this year. I hope it doesn't mean that we're not getting Quanta as the background economy, because for the whole sea to come in, there really kind of needs to be a big sea change to how the economy is functioning. So Greycat industrial tool, we've got a couple big Greycat tools here. Let's see, I think, yeah, they've got the tractor tool here that they finished a while back, but they've kind of been dinking around with the salvage tool. So this isn't the little handheld one. This thing is like the size of a bazooka. It's huge, but that will be a whole different level of salvaging. Might be rolling it out with 3.20. I don't know. They haven't rolled out the tractor tool. I'm guessing they're waiting on the PTV, because it's quite a bit more powerful than our hand tractor beam, but it's less powerful than the one on the vehicles, I'm guessing. But I don't know. I don't know when we're getting that. It would make sense to roll that out with the vehicle munching, just kind of, here's a salvage patch, we'll roll out a bunch of salvage things. But could we get it before then? Sure. Could we get it later? Sure. Hacking tier 0. So this is 127 weeks. So this one kind of started as kind of like how hacking is in most games, just kind of a mini game that you'd play. But it really sounds like they've turned the corner and turned it into its own game loop. So you could potentially have people in your group that are hackers, and that's all they do is hack their way onto ships, or white hat hack and prevent people from hacking onto your ship. Could be very cool when they get it. They've wrapped. Is it actually wrapped, or do they have more work to do? Who knows? We haven't heard about it for probably 3 years. Looked like a really, really cool game loop. Hopefully they start talking about it on Inside Star Citizen at some point, and then we'll know it's coming. I would guess like Fire, this one will probably come with the engineering game loop. So even though it'll be done, we're not getting it until they decide to put that in the game. Headhunters, that's another Pyro faction. Don't really worry about it till Pyro's in. I'm just going to kind of skip over the Pyro assets for that reason. Incendiary ammunition, other type of ammo. Life support, engineering. I just kind of showing that engineering is kind of end of the year, next year thing is what it's looking like. Map AR system rework, that kind of goes along with what I was saying before on the AR map marker, wrapping around the same time. I keep thinking they're going to sneak this into one of these patches, and all of a sudden you'll be looking at the map and it'll be the new star map that we've been asking for 7 years. But who knows? It looks like it's pretty good. The downstream teams have been in there. Looks good. MFD rework, this is probably what it's waiting for. Looks like they could sneak it into 3.20, but after saying, hey, it looks like they could sneak that into 3.19 and watching it jump up, I'm not saying that again. Mirai Fury, here we go. Wrapped, it's in there. Mystical Sea, wrapped a while back. Downstream teams have been in there. It looks like it's just waiting on the tech at this point. The reason that's tentative isn't because of the ship, it's because of the tech, and I go into that in that bit. Mission Manager app, this is another thing. The new Moby Glass is probably not going to drop before this. Speaking of the new Moby Glass, it's right here. So these are the sort of UI things I was talking about that I thought were dropping for 3.19. Obviously haven't. I don't think they're going to drop for 3.19.1. Drop for 3.20. It would be a really nice IAE surprise if we're not getting Pyro to drop a bunch of UI improvements on us and just kind of make the game easier to play. Just a thought, if you're out there listening. These are all the new missions. So data heist, mining resource, package extraction, retrieve consignment. A consignment, if you're not familiar with that word, it's basically just a shopping list. Salvage contracts, we already have one version in the game, but they're going to keep iterating on that with more and more ships. So expect this one, every time a new ship is added, this one's just going to keep going and going. A lot like derelict spaceships. But yeah, so those are wrapping, and I mean, it says they're 3.20 assets. This one surprisingly isn't. Okay, well, one of them is a 3.20 is consignment, but I wouldn't be surprised since these kind of have the same sprint length that they drop those other ones into and just kind of sneak it in there. And then all of a sudden you start seeing these other things pop up on your mission app. Would be kind of cool. New player experience. So this one is kind of interesting. This one added 37 weeks. So again, links in the up above part to what I think they should do for a new player experience. Basically just the too long didn't watch version is just do it in Arena Commander. Like have a person kind of go in, get in a sim pod, and do it in Arena Commander. And that way, if they crash taking off from the hangar, it doesn't matter. They just respawn at the beginning and they keep doing it until they learn how to fly. think that's a much better new player experience than making it halfway up to Tressler, crashing, and then spawning in a hospital gown, having no clue what's going on. That's not a very good new player experience. NPC scheduler service, speaking of NPCs, this is Quana. This is having them in subsumption, making them kind of act like they should. Quarter 3, been saying it for a long time, 130-week sprint. So yeah, who knows? Origin X1. So this is one of those things where I think lag is coming in. So you can sort of see that they're going to start work over here about a month from now. But in the ship show 2 weeks ago or a week ago, I think it's 2 weeks ago, John Crew was saying they were actually starting on it. It sounded like they're starting on it in a week. So X1 is a tiny bike. He also mentioned that the Gatak Raylan has gone into production, which is actually, now scroll up and look at that. So here's the Raylan here, and it says 7 weeks, and it's only the vehicle concept team that's been working on it. So is it lag? Did they put a pin in it? I don't know. I'd be shocked to see the Gatak Raylan before other ships that have been lingering out there. Who knows? It's just what I heard, people. But the X1, tiny little space bike. This seems like an unusually long sprint for a space bike, especially since they've already had a lot of work on it. And this is one of the reasons that I break it out, because if you look at it this way, it's a 93-week sprint, which is starting to get into like large and capital ship territories. And this is, again, a bike that's roughly the size of the Nox. But a few months, again, kind of Q4, we'll probably get it for Christmas. I would guess it will not take them a really long time to do it. What I was hoping they were going to do, and I say this every time, was release it with the rework of the 600i. But we haven't heard anything on the 600i for months. So probably not. I would assume they're just going to release the X1 on its own. Unless they have some secret origin ship out there that they're working on, they're going to drop on us at the same time. Persistent habs, persistent hangers. They've wrapped both of those, but we're probably not getting it until, and persistent any streaming right here, and server meshing. These are all kind of connected, as is the whole persistent freight elevator. Freight elevator is kind of tied into this too. Like, they're probably not going to bring in the persistent hangers till the freight elevator is done. So again, even though they finished this, we're probably not getting it until later. Hopefully this means more stability for the servers. Physical damage and breakability. Again, this is related to the next tier of salvage, vehicle munching. If you can't break the ships up, you can't munch them. That's what that is. Physics, rope simulation. This one's kind of weird and kind of cool because they have never talked about it. They've kind of talked about their like sheet physics and like blanket physics and stuff like that, but they've never talked about the ropes or what they plan to use them for. I would assume it's for like exploration, but they say ropes interacting with pulleys. So maybe it's for moving cargo in low-tech areas or areas where you don't have a tractor beam. Oh, okay, cool. Plasma ammunition. This one's actually new, I think, or at least I didn't notice it before. But again, another 5-week sprint. They're halfway through it. Looks pretty good. Player HUD, visibility. This is another UI big improvement once we get these. Just making... they're moving it over to building blocks, and it'll be custom to the ship manufacturer, which we haven't seen yet. We've seen it on a couple shows. We haven't seen it in the actual ships, but like when you're in an Aegis ship and it fires up, it'll be custom to Aegis, and you'll know that in Aegis, your speed indicator is here, and maybe they have like a really important, like, since they're mostly military ships, they have their targeting is right up here. Whereas MISC, which is more industrial, maybe the speed is down here or whatever. So it'll be one of those things that once you're familiar with the manufacturer, you might start favoring their UI too. And that's what this is all about. Quantum simulation, this is the NPCs walk around not being derpy. In theory, Q3, so maybe IAE, but again, the servers have to be in a place where quantum can actually work, and we're not there yet. Maybe by 3.20 we will be. 143-week sprint. So I mean, people always harp hard on Tony Z. Tony Z is not responsible for the server tech. He is doing this stuff, or at least I don't think he's responsible for the server tech. He's kind of doing like this high level stuff with quantum. So quantum might be working amazing on the back end or on their servers. But if the servers for us aren't functioning well, then you get NPCs standing on chairs. So I don't necessarily blame Tony Z for quantum not working. I do blame CIG for continuing to mention how amazing and groundbreaking it will be when we've got NPCs standing on chairs, but it's neither here nor there. Refinery ships. Kind of I would say there's two things left for the mining game loop. One is the gigantic assets that the large RSI miner and the Orion will need. The Orion will be mining planetoids, and yeah, I'm slightly exaggerating that, but it'll be big assets is what the Orion will go after. We don't have that, and we don't have refinery. And this is the first step of the refinery ships right here. So we'll probably get the Expanse, although they're rolling out the Galaxy. The Galaxy actually has a refinery. Even though this says Q3, we don't have any refinery ships, which, well, I guess we do. We have the Starfarer, which is a refinery ship. We don't have the Galaxy, which has a refinery. We don't have the Expanse, which has a refinery. So they'll probably do this sprint. And kind of like I was saying, Agile, you do the sprint until another team would need to take over, and then it just kind of puts a pin in it. Don't be surprised if this has a pin in it until they start working on the Galaxy, and then this one starts jumping out again. Would not be shocked. Resource management. This is the sort of the cornerstone of the engineer game loop. Like this is what the engineer will be spending most of their time doing, is resource management. You can kind of see 3.20 roughly, but I am out of the business of saying that 3.20 is going to be an engineering patch. Engineering will drop when it dropped. Rough and Ready faction, that's Pyro faction. RSI Polaris. So this is one of those that I don't want people to get fooled on. So it's a 37-week sprint. Polaris is a capital size ship. In my opinion, it should be a destroyer. It's kind of the king of the Corvettes. But sure looks like we're going to be getting in Christmas, right? Absolutely not. No, this ship is huge. This is just as far as they've planned. This thing will be going, we might get it for Christmas of next year. Maybe IAE if they really get cruising on it. Like if they have a larger dev team and they just zero in on it. It's RSI. They have a pretty well-established style guide. It doesn't have any incredible tech on it. It launches torpedoes. So I don't think that this is as complex or bespoke take a shot as the Banu Merchantman by any stretch. But yeah. Yeah, I don't expect this before IAE of next year at the earliest. Like if they knock it out before then, something's happened with their pipeline, or they've hired 500 incredible animators and modelers. Salvage vehicle munching. Here's the next stage of vehicle munching or salvaging. Q3-ish. So maybe 3.20 they drop it on us. They haven't said it yet, so that might be Christmas or beginning of next year. Kind of looking that way. Security network V1. This kind of goes along with hacking over here, but they also say you may need clearance for doors and elevators, so they might actually start moving in. One of the things they talked about years ago was sort of a smuggling game loop when you're coming into a city like Lorville. you get around those checkpoints by like knowing that there's a maintenance access door over here, and then you'd pop up over near Tammany and Sons, and the whole time you'd have to avoid security as you were moving through that. That's what this could be, which would be pretty cool if they implement it, like especially Lorville when you're walking around, but also places like Area 18. You'll notice there's little doors in places. A lot of that is just eventually, I would assume, going to be monster closets, like places that the NPCs, once they're working, can actually pour out into the verse and interact with people as needed. But some of those will be smuggler doors. And especially with Lorville, you can kind of get a sense for, man, if I were a smuggler and I came up here, I could kind of sneak around this corner and go over here kind of thing. I'm sure it's in the plans. Ship trespass, this coming in 3.20. Someone gets on your ship and they're not part of your party, you can gank them and you won't get a crime stat. Sliding, this is part of what I was talking about for traversal, that I thought 3.19 was going to be a traversal patch. Sliding, vaulting, climbing ladders, going prone, swimming. I think that's all. Oh no, EVA was the other one. Like just how you move around the verse. They've got a lot of things like sliding that they're working on right now. I thought it would be 3.19, maybe 3.20, but like engineering, this is one that I've predicted is going to drop in the next patch for at least 2 patches now, so I'm done doing it. I'm done. Definitely 3.20. Squadron 42 vehicle support. If you're ever wondering why one ship or another isn't being worked on, this is why, because they're all being, the bulk of the teams are working on vehicle support for Squadron 42. But with Squadron 42 rolling into polish, fewer and fewer teams are going to be working on these things. So you can see the US team right now doesn't have any assignments anymore. Montreal is strictly PU, so that's a good sign. I mean, obviously they're going to keep polishing and polishing and polishing on these clear through, and that's basically what the EU vehicle content team is working on. But it does mean as that polish moves further and further along, they're going to get more and more devs to be able to do PU assets, which is huge. Star Words, it's part of their localization, basically language translations, and a few other features kind of related to language, like real nowadays human languages, not like GN or Banu or anything like that. Subsumption editor integration. A lot of these subsumption and NPC things are kind of wrapping up, which is a good sign, again, if the servers can accommodate the NPCs moving around. Right now they can't. Swimming, kind of what I was talking about. Test Runner is a back-end data collection tool, right? Yeah, for like bugs and stuff like that. I would assume this is going to be doing a lot of the heavy lifting for the new Arena Commander. Will be in there. Tumbrel Storm. So, funny story about this one. For weeks now, I've been saying there was this unannounced ship that was a 78-week sprint that had something like a 60-week concept to it. And typically your concept sprints are like 12 to 20 weeks is a medium to large ship. Anything bigger than that, and you're starting to get into something that's either really alien or really big, or a combination of those two. For example, the Misk Odyssey was a 55-week sprint. This thing had like a 60-week sprint. It turns out what it was they got a new dev, and they were kind of walking him through the process of how to build a ship. And so it took him longer to kind of concept it out because they were training him. So that's something else I need to sort of add to my mental calculus of one of the things I'll do with the unannounced ships is look at the sprints and kind of judge how big the ship is. In this one, I was way off because new dev, they're training them. But I thought that this part was weird. Usually they have the concept team will work on it up to a point and then they'll stop. and then the vehicle content team will pick it up and start working on it from there. And that wasn't what happened with this. They had like the vehicle concept team and the vehicle content team had like 6 months of overlap. It was ridiculous. Like you look at that from right here to here, which might be part of their new production pipeline, which would be interesting, of kind of having the vehicle concept artist actually build out the white box to the vehicle content team's specifications. Then the vehicle content team can actually build the ship much faster, as opposed to having to wait until the concept is done, kind of taking the concept as an idea but having to rebuild the whole thing from scratch because none of the metrics are accurate. If they're doing that, that's a much more efficient way to do it. 78 weeks for something that's the size of the Storm, Stonk. I might go with Stonk. No, Stonk's already being used. Damn it. But anyway, Storm might get for 320. It's looking pretty good. One thing I want to point out, no downstream teams are in here, so this will definitely stretch out a few weeks because audio, VFX, GFX all need to have their bite. So that's probably going to be out here, which is still pretty close to IAE. So yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if we got the Storm for IAE. Wouldn't be shocked if it dropped next year, but IAE is a possibility, at least based on that. Ships that we could get for Alien Week, which probably by the time you're watching this, you'll know better than I did when I was making these guesses. We have this ship here that's been out there for 12 weeks. 12 weeks is like a medium-sized ship. Think like Freelancer to Connie sized, although now we have to add in, well, if there's someone new and is 12 weeks, it would be like a skateboard. But this one's been done for years. So whatever this is, if I had to guess, probably waiting on Pyro, because I mean, it's literally been done since like 2020. These are the ones that are more likely what we're getting for, we might be getting 2 for Alien Week. They're concept only. They're not straight to flyable. 28 weeks is larger, 15 weeks is medium-ish, medium to small, like medium to starter. Either one of these could be an Alien Week ship, or both. I wouldn't be surprised if they dropped 2 concepts on us, but we'll know tomorrow or today, depending on how quickly YouTube uploads this thing. Underground facilities, this is kind of a cool one. Unfortunately, it's one that's it keeps kind of stretching and stretching and stretching. So they might be waiting on Pyro. I was thinking there was kind of an outside chance that we get one underground facility in Stanton to kind of test it out, and then they kind of roll out other ones, kind of like what they did with the derelict settlement. We got Ghost Hollow. Yeah, we got Ghost Hollow, and now there's a bunch of them sort of scattered around. So I was thinking that they might do that, of drop one on us as just kind of a, hey, come look at this new asset kind of a thing. But it's looking like it might be a Pyro asset. We'll kind of have to see what happens in the next month. So, I mean, probably towards the end of Q3, we'll have a better idea of where this thing's going. You'll notice, again, no downstream teams. And there will definitely be audio and GFX, and all those guys will be taking their bite on that. Vehicle tractor beams, you're not getting the Argo SRV until we have vehicle tractor beams, but there are a lot of ships in the verse that are supposed to have tractor beams that don't, because they're waiting on this tech. It looks like the tech's all good for 3.20. So they might sneak it in for 3.20. It'd be kind of cool. I would assume, yeah, I mean, especially with the whole C coming in, it would make a lot of sense. But we haven't heard yet. So they haven't put the Argo SRV on there. So there might be, again, more sprints that have to come in. VFX has had a bite. I'm not seeing audio on there, and I would assume they would be. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, maybe we get it pretty soon. I would hope it's a 3.20 asset. That doesn't mean by any stretch that's guaranteed. Virtual AI service, there's more subsumption, quanta stuff. Again, even if they wrap it, we have to have the servers that can take it. Right now they can't. Maybe by September they will be able to, or 3.20, maybe they'll have made some improvements. Hopefully, we'll see. Weapon misfire and wear. So if you saw my little bit on blades yesterday, that shorter vid, misfire and wear is kind of the system that they've got that'll govern components. This one specifically does weapons, but that's the same system that'll degrade blades. So just be aware of that. That you might need to repair, or if you get a blade, get like 5. I don't think they'll be super expensive. Wheeled vehicle physics improvements, so camera all can finally shut up about vehicles parking at 90 degrees. Granted, it is kind of stupid that they get, so if you'll ever hear me harp on CIG, the things I harp on them is kind of their general planning and their communication. But with their general planning, just with a game that is a flight simulator, granted they didn't know they were going to have planet tech when they did, but you knew it was going to be a space flight simulator, that the space flight physics should have been the first thing that was nailed down. And once you realized you had planets to drive around on and you were going to have ground vehicles, vehicle physics should have been the next thing. Like, the fact that we're just now getting it is a little disconcerting, but it's kind of the way CIG goes. You get the good, you get the bad. You get an amazing space game with some incredible assets in it, but you also kind of get to sort of fractured system where they're just kind of throwing things at the wall, and it all lands at different times, and sometimes very weird timing. Zero G push pull, another traversal. What was I going to talk about? One other thing. Oh, the Volt weapons. All of these have wrapped for a while. I'm actually kind of surprised they haven't started popping up in loot boxes, but no sign on them yet. Visor lens rework, that's another UI asset. And gang, that's it. Thanks for sitting through this whole thing. You made it. Like and subscribe if you haven't already, and catch me next time. Let's go look at whatever new alien concepts are dropping. Don't spend too much money.